I am feeling a bit more human this evening, and I hope that I left it in the gerund form. What's a gerund? Okay, a gerund is a, I had it pulled up, sorry. A gerund is a verbal noun in Latin that expresses generalized or uncompleted action, an incomplete action. And that's why I titled this video Feeling a Bit More Human Tonight, because I don't want to be the only one who's feeling a little bit more human tonight. I want you to try to do something that helps you to feel a little more human. And this weekend, I've been around a lot of people who aren't in fear, and that's all I'm going to say right now. And it's been wonderful, and they're not in fear, and I feel more human as a result. I feel a lot more human, and I feel like I'm a better human because I appreciate more my contact with humans on a level where I can just shake hands and hug. I was hugged today a couple of times, and it felt really good. And one time was by an 89-year-old woman that I met, and she is lovely and awesome and extremely stylish and articulate and not obstructing her nose and mouth, which is awesome at all. She does have to do that when she goes in the hospital. Her daughter, she lives with her daughter, and her daughter has had some health issues, and she does have to do that when she goes in the hospital, which I think is horrible. But and I think we should work to stop that kind of thing, that kind of forced obstruction of uh, breath in the nose and the mouth. But I will say that I appreciate very much that she told my son, oh, when he told her that he was not afraid, and she said, "That's great that you're not afraid." And he told her that after she hugged him, and we used to hug people in their 80s pretty regularly when in the South. When we were in the South, because I know a lot of people who are in their 80s and they're lovely people, but now they are filled with fear, and I don't like that. And it was wonderful to see an 89-year-old woman who's healthy. I mean, she's been going through this whole thing 9, 10 months. Um, and why does she do that? Well, maybe because she's involved with a group of people who see through these things, and she's not living in fear, and she's very, very healthy. Um, and I'm so thankful for her for the mother-daughter relationship that she talked to me about. I'm so thankful for the conversation I had with her, and I hate that a lot of people are missing out on conversations like that, because I think that's to the detriment of our mental and physical health. And I was so thankful that I got to meet her and talk to her and tell her I love her, and I do. And please, if you pray, please pray for her and her daughter. And they are doing great, and she is a very healthy person, and I'm thankful I got to meet her and talk to her. And she needed to talk. People need to talk. And you know who told me that? The second person who crossed my path today who made a real impression on me, and that was a waitress that we had. And she and I had a very long conversation. Um, she took off her mask, and we were, because she had to, I guess, or there's the perception that they have to wear those at restaurants, and I would like to stop that too, because I don't like seeing people in these things, and it's traumatic for some of us to see a lot of people, but in these, with obstruction of nose and mouth. But it's a blessing to find places where most people aren't doing that. And we should work toward making all people, allowing all people to have a free decision about that kind of thing. Because I'm finding through what's happening this weekend, and I'm not going to go into detail about that, but I'm finding that there are a lot of people who see through this stuff and who don't live in fear, like that 89-year-old woman and the waitress I met who told me in a really passionate, I almost wish I could have written it down as quickly as she was talking because it was very beautiful about how much she loved her job and she loves hearing people's stories. And some people like to say a lot and some people don't like to say much, and how she loves hearing those stories and it means so much to her. And she said she liked being out of work for the first couple of weeks, but then she described herself as being melancholy when all this started coming down on the Ides of March last year. And this weekend, from what I understand, is her first weekend in the whole restaurants. I'm not going to go into details about that, but the whole restaurant's first foray into serving again and dining in and all of that. And it's a blessing because she loves her job so much. And a lot of people do really love their job. And she really missed it. And these places that are closing down really have to stop. And it seems like the government is really pushing people to close down. It's really sad because you're depriving people of their livelihoods, and a lot of people love their jobs. And this waitress made me see how passionate and how really, I mean, necessary. Talk about an essential job. She listens to people and feeds them, some of whom really need to be listened to and fed. And she does it with such kindness, and she was an awesome waitress. She had this whole restaurant by herself today, and she just handled it. And we talked about that too. And that's a good lesson for people to learn, how to handle stuff. I mean, I would have probably lost my mind even more than it's already gone, but she was just beautiful and graceful, and you could tell that she loved her work. And to deprive people of that kind of thing, that does not happen in a free country. So businesses have to start fighting back, and the government is fighting this. It seems to be trying to make us sick and mentally ill and all of that. So we really have to fight back against that. And I'm thankful for these two people who came into my life this weekend, and and my whole family. We all enjoyed meeting both of them and talking to them and being served by them. And sometimes I notice that when we give stuff away, that we are actually much more, it seems like we get more in return. And that's what I've noticed by these two people, and having these two conversations and just really enjoying them and being absorbing other people's energy, getting close enough to do that. I also learned this weekend, I learned a lot of stuff about Lincoln that I didn't know. He was not a really good guy, Abraham Lincoln, and we actually did go through Illinois, the land of Lincoln, but he wasn't, I don't know that he deserves any land for a lot of stuff that he did. But one thing I also learned is that the Talmud, which is a text that you probably should delve into a little bit more, but there's something in it that talks about 4 cubits being the distance between, for a disgraced person, that you would keep between yourself and I think, disgraced person, I think was the way it was put. And that turns out to be 6 feet. Now, this is really interesting, isn't it? I thought it was. I think my kids, but I and Mr. Comic Mom, we all learned so much. It felt like we had a semester of history this weekend in an afternoon, which was very, very wonderful. And I know that a certain billionaire who seems to be running the show, or at least a front man for running the show, he seems to think that we are all afraid of large gatherings. And I'm here to tell you that not everyone is. And I don't appreciate him speaking for me and for my family and trying to keep me apart from the wonderful people that I met this weekend and other wonderful people who are very good for us as humans, for me as a human. It's very good for me to be in contact with these people. And none of us are sick. None of us have even been sick. And the waitress, by the way, is not only not on social media, but does not have an email address or a computer. And she's a mom. Isn't that, I think that's really cool. She just doesn't have that in her life and doesn't really want it in her life. I mean, her kids do, but she she doesn't, and I really admire and respect that. I think we're going to all need to think about what we need to cut out of our lives and what we need to stay, what we really need to sustain ourselves through these difficult times, because these times are very difficult. And I'm so thankful for the two wonderful conversations. And having said that, I had some other shorter, even conversations with people, but that were more, I don't know. I had a lot of awesome conversations today. And I had some short conversations that were still um, filled with energy and filled with love. And these two people stick in my mind, the waitress and the 89-year-old woman, because I got to have a longer conversation with them and I got to really hear their stories and they got to hear, part of my story. And it meant a lot. And it meant a lot to my family. And I'm not in any sense, form, or fashion worried about getting sick. And from what the WHO has recently said, you shouldn't be either. People are still taking the highly unreliable PCR test, PCR test. I don't know what's going to be censored or not. Maybe nothing, but maybe something. But whatever the case, as long as they take that test, what's going to happen is that they're going to somehow manipulate it, because you can easily, and the WHO talks about that. And then they're going to manipulate it probably and make it look like the final solution, as a certain billionaire called it, the VACCINE, and maybe the president, our saviors. That might actually be the way this whole thing plays out. Isn't that a trip? But we know that they're lying. Somebody's lying about at least some things. So we should try to find the truth. I find the truth in poetry. It is the Lord's Day of poetry, the Lord's Day of comedy, the Lord's Day of whatever it is that you're doing. And I'm going to read a poem by Charles Bukowski called The Man, has a question mark at the end of the title, The Man. My daughter said this when she was 5. Here comes the man. What? I said. What? I looked all around. Here comes the man. Oh, here comes the man. I went to the window and looked out. I checked the latch on the door. She came out of the kitchen with a spoon and a pie pan. Clang, clang, clang. Here comes the man. Here comes the man. Oh, look, see the man. See the man now. Here comes the man. She means something else, I thought, and I clapped my hands in rhythm, and we both marched around and sang and laughed, me loudest. That is The Man by Charles Bukowski, from What Matters Most is How Well You Walk Through the Fire. That's the name of this poetry collection. And We are all walking through a fire. I hope you realize that. Probably have by now. So, how well we walk through it is something that we need to be thinking about big time. And we need to be thinking about how to be freer and how to be more human in a world that's trying to make us less free and less human. So please think about that. Feeling a little bit more human tonight. What can you do to feel a little more human tonight? And it might just be loving someone or understanding someone in a phone conversation. Think about that. And when you give your time to someone, chances are good that you are going to get back a whole lot more than you give. Oh, I gotta go now. Okay. Well, I hope you're having a wonderful Lord's Day, whatever you're doing, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the Lord's Day, and that you pray. I'm not giving advice, but pray for freedom and love and peace, and see what God lays on your heart to do.